One Piece episode 1153. Saint Saturn came crashing down onto the enormous pirate vessel. Luffy instantly warned everyone to stay clear of the Elder's legs. One touch from those venomous limbs could spell disaster. The crew locked their shields together, bracing against the chaotic onslaught. Luffy wound up for a massive counterstrike, but froze the moment he noticed Bonney below, gasping in a half-transformed Nika state. His expression hardened. Saturn lunged. Luffy intercepted the blow midair, coating his fist in haki and knocking the Elder's strike away, giving Bonney a chance to recover. Using that opening, Bonney rocketed upward, catching Saturn off guard. Seeing her take on a form so close to Nika's was enough to make the Elder visibly seethe. She was struggling to breathe, yet pushed herself onward. Luffy's grin returned as he cheered her on. Dr. Vegapunk's voice rang through the broadcast, declaring that the world was on the brink of a grand awakening. When that moment arrived, every buried truth of the Void Century would surface at once. He wasn't talking about hints or fragments. He meant a full-scale flood of knowledge. Thinking of Vegapunk as Oda's in-story avatar made the proclamation feel even more monumental. Images flashed across the world. Princess Shirahoshi in Fishman Island, Princess Vivi in Alabasta, two people whose fates were deeply tied to the ancient weapons Poseidon and Pluton. Vegapunk explained that the devastating armaments capable of sinking continents still existed. Next, the broadcast cut to Konus and Isa in Scipia. Vegapunk emphasized again that the ancient weapons' power remained alive. Hearing the phrase "power above the clouds" instantly brought to mind Enel. 14 long years have passed since his lunar escapades. The self-declared god revived an ancient hyper-advanced civilization and its machines, not to mention powering the Maxim all the way to the moon. If he could power that relic, who's to say he couldn't energize an ancient weapon as well? By definition, he practically already has. I've been waiting ages for my favorite cover story to finally tie into the main narrative, and later in this chapter, another cover story does exactly that. Vegapunk shifted to a more brutal truth. People born with rare bloodlines or unique racial traits were hunted and exterminated without mercy. Another consequence of the Hidden Era's sins. Meanwhile, Kuma stood silently behind the giants, staring down Saturn. In a flashback, Vegapunk once raved about Kuma's buccaneer heritage. Kuma, confused, questioned what made his lineage so important. Across the seas, Marco listened to the broadcast, recalling Whitebeard's words about the kingdom of gods that once existed where the Holy Land now stands, the supposed birthplace of the Lunarians. King, too, reflected on his origins, remembering how simply possessing knowledge of his people put a 100 million berry price on his head, equal to Luffy's second bounty. Elsewhere, Pudding thought about her third eye's value while trapped as Blackbeard's prisoner. Back aboard the giant's ship, Bonney steadied herself to counter the monstrous arachnid elder. Saturn mocked her for imitating Nika's power while knowing nothing of the world's true past. Luffy couldn't care less. What good was a villain rant if he refused to actually reveal anything? He stepped in once more to protect Bonney. With every passing second, Saturn's irritation grew while Luffy's carefree smile only widened. Bonney's determination hardened. Kuma's memories surged through her. She remembered Saturn telling a young Kuma at God Valley that buccaneers only had two futures, death or slavery, because history had already chosen their fate. She despised the elder for the suffering he had inflicted on her father. Even now, KIZARU remained frozen in place. Hard to tell if he'd pay for his inaction later. Bonney's anger deepened as she recalled how Saturn experimented on her mother, destroying her life. She outright rejected the idea of him being a god when real gods existed. Flashbacks showed little Bonney cherishing precious moments with her fading mother, then dancing the Nika shuffle with Kuma. Those memories taught her that true heroes were real, despite Luffy's constant refusal to accept that title. Tears streamed down her face. All she had ever wished for was a simple life with her parents. After so many years alone, the loneliness had been crushing, yet she had endured. She felt eternally grateful to her parents for the love they gave her, and they cherished her just as deeply. Luffy enlarged himself behind Bonney as she readied a powerful attack. The Water 7 shipwrights listened closely as Vegapunk warned that the answers coming would bring a worldwide reckoning. Vegapunk cautioned the world that when that long-awaited day finally dawned, every person would need to be ready to defend themselves, no matter what followed. His warning played over scenes of chaos between two of his old colleagues. Thanks to the events of their previous cover story, Caesar and Judge had managed to reunite and create Neomads. But the moment they came together, they immediately clashed again, just like in their youth. Back on Punk Hazard, the two geniuses bickered constantly, only to later realize it was because they were forever stuck in Vegapunk's shadow. Wanting to surpass him was the only reason they cooperated at all, and with Vegapunk presumed dead, their uneasy alliance seemed ready to fall apart once more. Vegapunk then spoke about his unshakable belief in humanity's potential, paired with a shot of Nami's mentors from Witheria. He placed absolute trust in science and in those brave enough to stand up to titans like Saint Warcury and Jupiter. He reminded everyone that it had been 25 years since Roger's death and 2 years since Whitebeard's, two giants whose passing signaled the rise of a new era. Back on the giant ship, Luffy layered his own barrage on top of Bonney's powerful strike. Saturn's massive form was full of holes, completely overwhelmed. As the Elder's battered body plummeted toward the sea, Vegapunk stated that in this age, there were people who simply could not be crushed, a follow-up to last chapter's claim that some individuals simply could not be stopped. So what happens when an unstoppable force slams into an immovable object? Inflicting this level of damage on Saturn was extraordinary. The last time Luffy blasted him with Dawn Gatling, the Elder bled and was sent flying. Compared to Saint Warcury's toughness, Saturn's durability looked almost flimsy. Bonney had managed to stab him earlier with a regular blade, no haki at all. Saturn insisted he could have dodged if he wanted, but for someone so gigantic, relying on evasion over raw defense felt suspicious. Even Nusjuro had been in better shape than Saturn after being at the center of a massive explosion. Technically, Luffy didn't need Bonney's help for this fight, but he wanted her involved, wanted her to stand with him, and with every use of Gear 5th, Luffy's growth became more absurd. He went from toying with Lucci at the start of the arc to shredding elders like cheese, and with any luck, Saturn would sink straight into the ocean. The giant pirates erupted in victory. Bonney broke down, unable to control her tears, and Luffy's laugh rang out as he praised her efforts. Even Kuma's silent face twitched with the faintest smile. Then Dory and Brogy noticed something overhead. The Sunny. Usopp was screaming for someone to catch them as the ship descended, clearly needing assistance to land. Zoro tightened his grip on his sword, sensing something amiss. Back on the global broadcast, Vegapunk explained that those who refused to yield were often the ones closest to discovering the real truth. He wondered aloud whether this was coincidence or part of a path Roger had set into motion with his dying words. Shaki draped a blanket over a drunken Rayleigh who had passed out mid-celebration. Across the world, pirates cheered at Vegapunk's message. He told them plainly that there was no guarantee the One Piece would end up in the hands of the person Joy Boy might have wished for. On Hachinosu, tensions rose among restless pirates confused by Blackbeard's absence. Aboard the Red Force, Shanks was scolded for drinking too much, but naturally he ignored it. On empty bluffs, cross-guild members endlessly praised their chairman now that all doubts had been erased. Buggy had absolutely no idea what he was being congratulated for, of course. His followers thanked him for reaching higher than anyone expected, and for dreaming bigger than they could comprehend. Mihawk and Crocodile glared in disbelief. They knew Buggy was bluffing, yet even they were at a loss for words. The speech must have hit especially close to home for Crocodile, given his obsession with ancient weapons. Even the Marines were fired up about chasing Roger's treasure, though they already had their hands full. Vegapunk made it clear the world was speeding toward a destiny that no one could prevent. Everything now hinged on whoever reached the One Piece first, and then came a magnificent double-page spread, the broadcast, the possibilities, everything ultimately circling back to the treasure that started it all. At the top stood the four most obvious contenders: Shanks, Luffy, Blackbeard, and Buggy, each a central force in the current era. Below them stood an even broader range of potential claimants: Akainu, Dragon, an unknown wanderer, Imu, Kobe, Aokaji, Garling, and Sabo. One mysterious silhouette appeared to belong to a swordsman, though clearly not the world's strongest.